So the remaining two nominations for Best Picture for the Oscars, I saw them both on Tuesday, and the first one I saw was The Big Short. So, The Big Short is a true story about this financial crisis that happened back in 2007 to 2008. And this film is about a few individuals that can see this coming. They can predict that this crisis is going to happen. And they try to use this to their advantage to profit off of the bank's greed and lack of foresight of this impending market crisis. How do they profit by it, you might ask? By betting against the American economy, because they know it's about to collapse. Now listen, the premise of this film does seem like, okay, this could be a dry, pretty boring, and confusing movie. But the fact of the matter is, this movie is quite the opposite. It actually has a lot of personality, it's really funny, it's very engaging, and it's quite horrific of things that happen by the end of the film. I thought it was quite engaging, and it kept my attention and kept me from not really being completely lost. It takes all these dry, uninteresting concepts and definitions of things that could be very confusing to most people, well, probably the large majority of people, and explains it in a way that's really funny, but at the same time very informative. It's like they're trying to explain it to dumb people by showing all these different things like Margot Robbie in a bathtub, but explains it in a way that makes total sense and very informative at the same time. And I really like that about this film, especially the blackjack scene. The blackjack scene towards the very end of the film was probably the most informative of all these scenes. And it definitely gave the film a more personality because it broke the fourth wall several times throughout the movie. Every character pretty much does it. And even though most of the characters are over the top, quite funny, and quite jerkish, there's enough humanity within each of them that make them feel real, make them feel human. And also sometimes a physical change that makes them feel like they belong in this sort of business, of this behind a desk sort of business where they don't really interact with a lot of people. Take Christian Bale's character, for instance. His character is a little different from most Christian Bale roles. His character is a socially awkward dude. He's one of those guys that doesn't really understand how to interact with people, and Christian Bale takes full advantage of that because he's one of those actors that really delves into a role, especially if it's a role about a true person. But he does have a really cool aspect to him where he listens to like heavy metal stuff. He has a glass eye, which was distracting at first, but once they explained that he has a glass eye, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why his eye looks a little funny. But even though I really love Christian Bale as an actor and I thought his character was really great, I thought the one that really drew my attention was Steve Carell's character. He's over the top, he's really mad at some of the injustices that happen in the business they belong in. Even though he's a bit crazy and maybe a little hypocritical, he definitely has a heart to him and he feels like he's one of the more moral characters throughout the film. And I love that Ryan Gosling's character was the one that was narrating the film because even though he's not the main character of the movie, like he's pretty much a supporting role, even though he's the narrator of the film, it makes sense why the narration is just like that because it fits his character completely. He's a total dick. He's one of the most unlikable characters in the film, but there's a likability to him because he's so damn funny at it. But that gives us those scenes where the fourth wall breaking seems to make sense and why explaining some of these things in the dumb sort of way makes more sense because he's the character telling the story and it seems like that's the sort of thing this character would do for people. He would talk down to people and like, oh, well, you don't understand this? Well, let me explain you in lamest terms, you know? This is just one of those movies that in the wrong hands could be really boring and dry, but it's very interesting, engaging, and I really had a fun time with it. And by the end of the film, despite it being sort of a fun joyride throughout most of the film, by the end of it, I was horrified. It made me sick to my stomach. Some of the things that caused this crisis and the things that happened after the crisis and who was blamed and stuff. It really makes you sick and horrified with some of the things that happened. And I think that was good of the film because that's sort of the point of the film. I think the only issues with the film that I have is that, one, it doesn't feel like a 5-star worthy film for me. Like, I really enjoyed it, but I just didn't love the film as much as I love some of the other films that I give 5 stars to. I also, even though it gave the film a style, I wasn't a big fan of it showing clips and things of the particular year or particular decade or month they're in. That it's like a bombardment of images and things on the news and stuff and celebrities, and it was kind of weird, and I understand that's the style of the film, but I just didn't like that sort of style. But guess what? Each act starts with a quote, and guess what the quote was at the beginning of the film? It was yet another Mark Twain quote. I've seen 3 movies now within a week that starts with a Mark Twain quote. Diablo did it, Band of Robbers did it, and The Big Short did it. Who would have guessed? It's just crazy. I'm on the fence with The Big Short. It's definitely more than a 4 for me, but I don't think it's a 4.5 for me. It's definitely in between, but I think it's closer to the 4 for me, so I'm going to give The Big Short 4 stars. So, did you like The Big Short? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. And as always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.